Good evening. I'd like to call our meeting back to order from break. We're going to continue on. We finished our work session, and the next item on the agenda is the report of the President of the Board of Education. And give me just a sec to pull up my notes. I wanted to start off this evening by sharing a statement that our communications staff posted on our Facebook page and shared at the middle of last week regarding the President's action on DACA. In February, as questions about the potential effects of changes to federal immigration laws began to surface, Lawrence Public Schools reaffirmed our commitment to protecting the rights of all staff and students. Given the President's recent announcement to rescind Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, the school district wants to emphasize that Lawrence USD 497 is a learning community that welcomes all staff, students, and school families. The district is committed to ensuring safe and supportive learning environments and providing equal opportunities for all students regardless of race or immigration status. We value the privacy rights of each individual and take seriously our responsibility to safeguard the personal information of staff and students. Lawrence Public Schools do not release educational or personnel records unless authorized by the staff member, parent, or adult student to whom they belong, or directed by court order to do so. If you have any questions about the release of personal information, please visit with your school principal. Just wanted to share that and make sure that that information was shared widely with our school communities. Beyond that, I just have a couple of things to report on. I'm going to start with these notebooks that should have been on each board member's chair today. A couple weeks ago, I attended a KSB training on Superintendent Evaluations. And so in your chair tonight, you're going to find this packet of materials that has been gathered for board members to consider. What I'm hoping that each board member will do with this information is to review. There's a set of evaluation instruments in here. So if you look at the first couple of pages, the first page is actually an NSBA checklist that talks about what criteria we should be looking at to ensure that our evaluation tool covers these areas. So just kind of a checklist of things that our evaluation process and our tool should do. The second page is a timeline with some steps and a kind of opportunities for us to fill in dates about the evaluation process. And then the next three tabs, there's one that says admin eval, performance-based eval, and McCrell. So those are three different kinds of evaluation tools that were shared with people who attended that training. And so what I'm hoping, and then the last tab actually is the KEEP rubric that we have been using. So that's our current evaluation tool. What I'm hoping board members will do is to take a look at the three different types of evaluation tools, look through them, think about whether you feel like they get at the things that board members have expressed that they don't really like about the KEEP rubric in terms of the way that it does or doesn't align with how we want to do an evaluation. And then at our next board meeting, I'm going to do a short presentation to just kind of provide some context about these tools. And then if you've had a chance to look at them, I'm hoping we can have a fuller discussion about which direction we want to go and if we want to use one of these tools or if we want to use one of them as a model with some changes just to try to make a decision, because we really need timeline-wise, we really need to make a decision so that Dr. Stubblefield has an opportunity to do a self-evaluation this fall that we would then use as part of the evaluation that has to be done by February 15th. So that's what these are for. Homework. I'm giving everybody homework. All right. That also on the weekend of August 25th and 26th, I attended a couple of events. I mentioned earlier a federal education issues conference that I attended. They did presentations on title programs from KSDE staff. We heard a lunchtime presentation by Congressman Roger Marshall and also some advocacy updates from the National School Board Association and the National School Superintendents Association's lobbyists. My favorite takeaway, and I wanted to share this, was from the National School Superintendents Association federal lobbyist. She said, one thing to consider in our communications with our legislators is that less bad does not make it good. And so in our advocacy about policy issues, to not give them the big pat on the back for doing the thing that's less awful, but to continue to advocate that for the good things that need to happen and making sure they're hearing from us. And as an action plan, she suggested committing 5 minutes a month to sending emails to either your congresspeople or if you can get a hold of them, the names of their education staffers. What was really interesting was that Congressman Marshall actually said to the group that education is not his primary area of expertise, and he relies very heavily on that staff person. And so it was kind of it does make a difference to contact those staffers. And at KASB, they talked about trying to provide some contact information to members, and so I'm looking to see if that's something that will be made available to us in the future. We also had a board of directors meeting for KASB, and Randy Watson came and spoke on the Kansas CAN vision and the new accreditation system, talked about the Mercury and Gemini school redesign projects, which there is a set of schools that have applied this year and next year to do high school and elementary middle school redesign, and talked about standardized testing. I guess this was the thing I mentioned earlier, that he had issued kind of a challenge to local districts and board members to look at, since the state has reduced their own testing footprint, to look at the testing footprint that we are using in our own districts. And it was a really good conversation that we had during our goal setting session tonight about that. So also wanted to make board members aware that the Kansas Attorney General's Office is offering free Open Meetings and Open Records Act training on October 6th in Topeka from 9 to noon. It's free, but they ask you to register. If you're interested in going, I can get you the phone number to call. I'm planning to attend, and if I go, I'll report back. So that's all I have this evening. Thanks. And we'll move on to the report of the superintendent.
Okay, I just have a couple of things. Today is Patriot Day, observed as the National Day of Service and Remembrance in memory of the 2,977 civilians, military personnel, and emergency responders killed in the 2001 September 11th terrorist act. The attacks had a profound impact on our nation and the rest of the world, and we want to pause, remember, and honor those who died. Thank you. There will be a joint meeting of the Board, Douglas County Commission, and the Lawrence City Commission from 4 to 5:30 p.m. next Monday in the meeting room of the Baker Wetlands Discovery Center. That address is 1365 North 1250 Road. The public is welcome to attend. I understand there may be some inaccurate information circulating on social media about school lunches and specifically the sale of a la carte items. I want to share that our schools never deny a student a meal due to inability to pay. A la carte purchases of individual items are seconds, however, do require adequate funds in the lunch accounts. Parents may review student meal purchases online at myschoolbucks.com and may complete a form at the child's school if they wish to limit or deny a la carte purchases. While there are some school districts across the country that may be making a lot of money on the sale of a la carte items, our district is not one of them. All of the a la carte items we sell also meet USDA Smart Snack guidelines for nutritional value. It was my pleasure yesterday to support our Lawrence Teachers of the Year, Lisa Melton, Sunflower 5th grade teacher, and Jack Hood, Lawrence High history teacher, as they were recognized during the Kansas Teacher of the Year Region 2 Awards banquet. In addition, Amanda Tolbert, a new English teacher at Free State High School, was honored as last year's Teacher of the Year nominee for Topeka Seaman School District. So we got a good one. Actually, we got several good ones. Lisa Melton received additional recognition yesterday as an elementary semifinalist, and ultimately teachers from Atchison and Silver Lake were selected to represent the region at the state level of the Teacher of the Year program. So congratulations to Lisa and Jack. Congratulations to Free State, Lawrence High, and Lawrence Virtual High School for encouraging more students to take the ACT exam, and to those students, test takers, for their outstanding performance on the ACT exam last year. Our high schools continue to offer rigorous coursework to help prepare students for college and careers. My thanks to the Lawrence Chamber of Commerce for hosting another fun Taste of the Lawrence Mixer last week, and to the Chamber member business who make it possible for our employees to attend annually at the annual event at half price. The district invites Hispanic school families to attend our annual Hispanic College Fair from 5:30 to 8 on Wednesday evening at the Lawrence College and Career Center. Friday is a big day for us as we welcome home Free State High School alumnus Hamilton Lewis to publicly share remarks about his educational journey during the Lawrence Schools Foundation Community Education Breakfast. Hamilton is a film animator and pre-visualization artist who has worked on some blockbuster movies for DreamWorks. I also want to invite the community to our most recently completed elementary school construction and renovation projects during open house at Pinckney and Sunflower from 9 to noon on Saturday, September 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is patron commentary. Do we have any patron commentary this evening? We do not. Okay, then we'll move on to board commentary. All right, great. Next on our agenda, consent agenda. Consent agenda items are those that are considered routine and are adopted by one motion unless any board member or the superintendent requests that an item be removed. The item or items removed are voted on separately, and I believe we do so.
Yeah, I'd like to request that we remove the contract amendment with BG Consultants from the consent agenda and take care of that as part of the F&O, GMP for our new F&O facility since they go together. So,
all right, so then can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with that amendment?
yeah.
No, someone make the motion besides me.
I'll move the Board of Education adopt the items listed on the consent agenda with that change from Marcel.
Second?
Second.
All right.
Bell?
Yes.
Sorry. Ingram?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Kimball?
Yes.
Sandburn?
Yes.
Beeson? Yes. Fincher?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our discussion and approval items. Tonight, we're going to revisit our decision-making process for selection of search firm regarding selection of the next superintendent. David Cunningham, Executive Director of Human Resources and Legal Counsel, is here to provide support if we need it, but really I think where we are is we just need to have a discussion as a board about which of the firms that we interviewed a couple of weeks ago is going to be the firm. So, anybody want to start?
I can tell you my top pick that was well above the rest was Ray and Associates, and so if we have consensus around that, that might be a good place to.
That was also my
Make
top.
sure.
Mine too.
Was my topic.
Yes, okay, mine as well, so. All right.
That's a pretty
then,
easy discussion.
I guess I will say I wanted to just provide a little bit of context as to why them. I'm having some technical difficulties.
While you do that, I'll give my reason. I think that one of the issues that we have really tried to focus on as an institution is looking at improving diversity within our hiring practices, and I think that that was one of the lenses that I used to kind of go through the application materials. And while all three firms kind of spoke to it, they spoke to it in a way that was much more organic and seemed more real and rational than the others. And I was impressed by that specific factor, leaps and bounds beyond the other two firms. And so that certainly played a part in my decision.
I think there were several factors that I felt like set them apart. One, I appreciated that as part of their proposal for the base cost of their search that they included some services that weren't necessarily included in some of the other proposals, including background checks for the final candidates, and the fact that they'll provide a couple of follow-up sessions after we complete the hire to do just some relationship building between the board and the new superintendent, and that is part of their package. So I thought that was really good. I also liked the fact that they guarantee their search for 2 years, which was different than the other firms. I'm excited about their process for having video interview clips that will allow the board to do screening of candidates in a step that doesn't necessarily require bringing candidates here for interviews multiple times. I think it's a smart way to do it. It will save us costs on that part of it, but it will also help us make better decisions in that part of the process. And then some intangibles, and that ties into what Vanessa said. I do think that they got our district in a way in terms of our priorities and giving me a feeling of comfort and confidence that they understand us and they'll be open to listening to what we need and applying those needs to the search process. So those are really the factors that caused me to choose them as my first choice.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, I agree with Vanessa's. I thought that from a diversity standpoint and equity, they definitely got it better than the other two. I felt their presentation that they were more personable, that they had a better connection with us, that I thought would also translate well to when they were engaging staff and community. And so,
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else to add? There is a motion in the agenda item for this, if someone wants to make that motion.
I'll move that the Board of Education hire the firm of Ray and Associates to conduct a search for the next superintendent of schools and direct staff to engage in negotiations with the selected firm to finalize the contract for those services in the amount not to exceed $30,000.
Second. Ingram,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Sandburn,
Yes.
Beeson,
Yes.
Fincher,
Yes.
Harmon.
yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our reports and approvals tonight. First up, ratification of the master agreement with David Cunningham.
Good evening. So you have a enclosure that outlines for you the tentative agreement that was reached by the parties. I wanted to highlight a couple of pieces of that. Salary, add $2,310 to base. I think the significance of that is it brings us $40 above a $40,000 starting salary for our teachers, which I think puts us in a very competitive position, particularly with schools to the east of us. We're within, Blue Valley ended up at $40,600. Shawnee Mission's quite a bit higher than those two numbers, but we're right in the ballpark now at that. And I think that was one of the things that the board was certainly interested in accomplishing, was creating a more competitive salary schedule, and we were, with your support, we were able to do that. In addition, we've continued to provide for a full single health insurance policy for our staff who are 1.0 FTE, and I use that generically. There are actually some folks that can be less than 1.0 that still qualify for full benefits under the ACA provisions, but we pay 100% of that premium. So that is a positive thing. We had a nominal increase this year of a little over $20 per month per employee. So that was good news, but that's another component of it. We restructured the way in which we compensate our FFA advisors, club advisors, in the additional stipend area. They were receiving some additional days, but provided some information to the Additional Assignments Committee to demonstrate that the amount of work that they were putting in really was more commensurate to one of our stipends in the $3,000 range. And so that was added. And then the Scholar Bowl, the amount of work tied up with that, needing an assistant, that was also brought into the master agreement. So you have amounts that reflect those for an annual basis for both the high schools. There's some language changes as well that are outlined in the enclosure, but those were the highlights that I think were important in terms of completing an agreement. As I noted, in I think the last meeting, the Teacher Lawrence Education Association membership, and actually includes all teachers in the district, they did overwhelmingly ratify the tentative agreement. So they've reported that to us. So it's now up. It's in your court now, so to speak, in terms of ratification. And these items reflect everything that you agreed to authorize your team to negotiate on behalf of the board.
Any questions for Dave? Ready for motion then?
I can make the motion. I move that the Board of Education approve the tentative agreement and ratify the 2017-2018 master agreement and the certified compensation and fringe package in the amount of $3,426,354.
I'll second it.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Beeson,
Yes.
Fincher,
Yes.
Harmon,
Yes.
Ingram.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, next up, bond sale resolution with Kathy Johnson, Executive Director of Finance.
Good evening. We had a good day today, so we're going to share some good news with you. We have with us tonight staff from Gilmore and Bell, our legal counsel, because you've got lots of paperwork to sign with lots of stuff. And then Dave's here with George K. Baum, and he's going to actually share the bid results and the process with you and how that turned out.
Thank you. Okay. And I just want to note for board members that there is a revised enclosure at our places that reflects the information about what happened today with the sale.
Turn it on. You can go ahead and start, and I'll pull this up real quick while he's talking.
Good evening, David Arterberry with George K. Baum and Company. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I think we do have some good news for you. Today, the school district received bids for the first $43.5 million of bonds that was authorized by voters back in May. This is a 20-year bond issue. We met today in the finance office conference room and pulled up the website where the bids were being provided, and prior to the sale, we saw that there were 8 firms registered to bid, which we were really pleased by. Quite honestly, I would have been happy with 4 to 5 bidders. The bid deadline came, and when we opened the bids, fortunately, all 8 of the bidders did end up bidding, and the best bid was provided by, it should be there in front of you, Hutchinson, Shockey, and Early and Company, which is out of Chicago. And the interest rate, the true interest cost on their bid was 2.950476%. Thereabouts, roundabout. They, in addition to having 8 bids, a couple of other points that I would just sort of like to mention to kind of show you how good and aggressive the bidding was. If you look there, the difference between the low bid, the best bid by Hutchinson Shockey, and the highest bid by Wells Fargo is only a 0.06%. For that many bids, that's a very narrow spread. And the other thing I'd point out is Kathy had printed out another report and gave it to me earlier, right after the sale, that showed when the bids were received. Of those 8 bids, we had 1 bid show up 6 minutes in advance. All 7 of the other bids showed up within 24 seconds of when the bids were due, which tells me that the bidders were really spending up until the last seconds, sharpening their pencil to try to give you the most aggressive bid possible. And I'm real pleased to say that bid by Hutchinson Shockey is obviously a very good bid. We verified it mathematically, it's correct. It meets all of the other bidding parameters that we put in place. So we see no reason that you wouldn't want to go ahead and accept that bid. We did actually, after the bid was opened and we verified it mathematically, made sure it was correct. We did, just in order to make sure that the amortization, the repayment structure met with the school district's needs going forward, we sort of moved some principal amounts around, and the actual true interest cost will end up being about 2.94%, so a little lower than what's shown. So, but really, that's it. The only action item required by the board tonight is to, I think you see that motion on, the board there, or the handout there. If there are any particular questions about the sale, I'd be happy to answer them. If there's any particular questions about the actual motion and the resolution, there are representatives from Gilmore and Bell here that I'm sure could address those too.
Thank you. The only question I had, and wanted, I think others had asked this question, is when we were talking about this bond sale, am I correct in remembering that we were thinking that if we got somewhere around 3%, that we were going to be doing well for the interest rate on this bond sale? So we came in even lower than we had hoped.
Yeah, the interest rates that were used in some of the initial mill levy projections were closer to 3.6 or 3.7%.
Right.
So this is even
Even better.
considerably lower than that.
That's really good news then.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Other questions? Thank you for all of your good work on this. We really appreciate it. Make a motion then.
I move the board adopt a resolution authorizing and directing the issuance, sale, and delivery of the district's general obligation refunding and improvement bonds, Series 2017A, and accepting the bid of Hutchinson Shockey Early and Company with an interest rate of 2.950476%, all as presented to the board.
Second?
Second.
Kimball,
Yes.
Eason,
Yes.
Fincher,
Yes.
Harmon,
Yes.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you very much. All right, next on our agenda, GMP for new facilities and operations site, and the item from consent, the BG Consultants Amendment with Tony Barron, Executive Director of Maintenance and Operations.
Good evening, Tony Barron, Executive Director of Facilities and Operations. Thank you for having me here tonight. So I want to talk about our proposed GMP, guaranteed maximum price for our facilities and operations, warehouse, IRC, and future transportation site at 711 East 23rd. As many of you know, we acquired the site earlier this year and have been in probably years in the making of trying to find a site that works and consolidate services. So I'm going to go through a little bit of background before I get to the pricing of everything, just to kind of show you how we got to where we are today. For the background here, in 2015, we consulted with, I'm going to say we consulted with BG, which was a different consultation than what it was, what we're going to talk about later with the, what we pulled off the consent item. But what we did, we got with them, we contracted with them to go over a site study with us. We went over 6 proposed sites, 6 district-owned sites, and 1 site that we did not own. Here's the objectives for the study were basically to classify sites to see if it was worth us to go through the process of developing a site that was undeveloped. Determine relocation opportunities for our services. Primarily, as you know, Paula Murish and I, we work close together on all of our operational stuff. So her being with the warehouse, which is now located off of 29th and Haskell. Us at Facilities and Operations, 146 Main, and then our IRC, which is out here in this office, in this building. So the logistics of it becomes really difficult. So consolidate those services, and then the ideal adjacencies, obviously, and co-location opportunities, which we can help us with efficiencies. And then space needs. I'm not sure if any of you have walked through our site at 146 Main, but it's a very tight space. We're on 1.15 acres, and it's a very small office space. After we established the objectives, as you can see here, we decided to, as you know, we decided to purchase a former Douglas County Public Works site, which is just a little over 7 acres, and it's located at 711 East 23rd. If you reference it, I'm not sure if you guys know where that's at. It's it would be, if you're driving, let's say you're driving east on 23rd, and you just pass Haskell University, it would be right there on Burroughs Creek Trail, just to the, it borders Haskell on the east side of the property on the south side of the 23rd Street. So that's the location that we're at. Some great things about this, the strategic centralization of support services, as I mentioned before. Warehouse will be on site, we will be on site, IRC will be on site, and at some point in the future we'll have transportation. Plenty of core and shell space to be renovated. The cost benefit of trying to develop infrastructure on an undeveloped site, some of the sites we looked at were the west property that we own, which is just a pasture right now, and it's off of 1500 Road. We have a site on the east side that's undeveloped. Holcomb Park was looked at. It just was probably too small for our operation. East Heights was looked at. Just didn't really feel like it was a good place for us, considering the neighbors. And plus, the site itself may have been a little bit too small. College and Career Center, we have some land out there that we considered, but same thing, we wanted to keep that open for future expansion of the school itself. And the sixth one is really eluding my mind, and I apologize for that. But the other site was 7-Eleven, which was what we chose here. New buildings, we demoed a few buildings. We tried to keep as many that were functional for us. Some of them were dilapidated enough and did not have any function, so we demoed, I believe, 3 structures on site. Utilities are there, and the great thing about this site is we swapped it, did a land swap plus some cash with the county because they want our 146 main site. So it was a really good, positive relationship between the both of us. Here's a view. Here's the proposed view as it stands now. I'm going to, if you picture yourself, we are looking northwest. So if you look to the upper right-hand corner of this picture, that would be 23rd Street. So that's 23rd Street. If you see a building in dark gray, that's an existing building that stayed on site. If it has a light gray, that means it's a new building that we're building on site. So if you look right here, this is the proposed new warehouse. It's approximately 13,500 square feet. This area right here is going to be the IRC space. It's going to be approximately 6,500 square feet. This gray building right here is an existing building on site, and it has approximately, I think it has 5 overhead doors right now. So we're going to use it as our staging area for our trucks to unload, and it's going to be where all the deliveries come in, and then they'll be forklifted or pallet jacked into the warehouse for storage. This right here is just a covered storage space. These outlying buildings over here were existing buildings that we're going to use for grounds shop, ground storage, covered parking right here, and then along the north side of the property, that's going to be the mechanic space, which is that's the role they currently serve right now. And then if you come down here, there's approximately 9,000, a little over 9,000 square feet of office space for not only admin assistants, myself, director, supervisors, but also all of our trades guys. And they're also going to have a workspace in there. I'll go into that in more detail. Here's a top view floor plan of the warehouse and the IRC, and I'll just walk through it really quickly. As I mentioned, the 13,500 square feet right here of the proposed storage area. To the right-hand side, you can see the IRC area. They're going to be office down here in the blue. This is going to be more of a finished space. We have office and break room and restrooms for our warehouse people and also our IRC staff. IRC does have a second level. It seemed like a waste of space. They need more floor space, so we put a second level on the IRC. So if you look at this picture right here, they do have approximately 1,600 square feet on the upper level. And then I'm going to get to the actual floor plan for our space. I won't get into where we're at right now, but this is definitely a very nice space for us. It is going to meet our needs. Plus, we've programmed a few extra offices for future expansion. One reason why we're in a position that we're in right now with needing more space is we just have outgrown it. It's plain and simple. As many additions as they made to it, it's a very tight space. So I'm going to walk you through real quick. If you see, this will be, the up is north. Right here is our main entry. We're going to have a secured entry into the space as we do all of our locations. Reception, office coordinator, and then if you just look along the line here, these are all offices along the exterior here for our trades and for our supervisors. We have a break room right here in the middle, which will be reinforced as a hardened shell. And then we have a nice meeting room of approximately 780 square feet. Right now, we don't have a space. We have approximately 30 employees on site, and we just don't have a space big enough that we can have a meeting. We're usually in the mechanics bay or the grounds building, or outside, and I'm trying to talk to them, and it just, for anything that's any length of time, it's just very tight and not conducive. So we're hopeful that this break room / training room will help us to communicate better with our staff. And then right here we have storage. We have a lot of storage on site. We just, obviously storage is important to us. So the proposed GMP and the price breakdown goes as follows here. We have a proposed GMP of 5.334 million, 165. So that includes the demolition, and if you remember, a package came to you, an early package demo came to you in May 5th board meeting, I believe. And so we have the demolition has been underway. So So the 277 is part of the demolition. Site work warehouse IRC renovations, you see the number of 3.316. And then the facilities and operations building and the trades offices around 1.740, which brings us to the total of 5.33. Any questions on this part? So the estimate and funding source, and this is, when we did this, like I said, we started the process in June of 2015, and we were working with BG Consultants. And so we came to the point where we felt like a 4.8 was right around our target, what we wanted to hit for the budget. We went through that. We didn't make it. Obviously, as you can see, what I'm bringing to you is 5.334. And I'll get into maybe some of the rationale behind that. We did, at that time in February, we had to go forward with a 12-week process to secure a loan for financing, and that's going to be on a lease, which you guys also have approved. The numbers we had there led us to the 4.8, 4.85 range. And then that's the amount that we financed. So where that leaves us today with the proposed GMP and the lease purchase, it leaves us approximately at $484,000 to come out of capital outlay funds. So the estimate versus the actual cost, you're probably wondering, okay, how did we get that far off? A couple things happened. We were in the process of procuring the site. It kind of became a very long process, longer than anticipated for us for various reasons. The delayed procurement of that caused us, as of today, we're 9 months in, we were expected to be starting the construction in January 2017. We originally contracted with BG for the actual design of the site in October. We accelerated the program. We wanted them to be ready by to start in January. One thing we noticed that obviously the funding, we need to secure the funding, and the other thing that was just the simple fact of the site plan process for us. If you look at the next bullet point, the February 2017 site plan submittal, we went into this with some assumptions that weren't very good. We started the site plan in February of 2017, submitted it to the city, and we didn't get it back for approval until July of 2017. So it caused us to hold off on a few things until we had some unknowns. And those unknowns were in the range of $350,000, which puts us about where we're at over budget, a little bit more, plus the 96 for escalation. The construction market is also just, it's pretty saturated right now. There's a lot of companies fighting for a lot of jobs. We're kind of at the mercy of the contractor. When we're above budget, we keep going back to them, and we're kind of at their mercy to give us the cost that they give us. And so that leads us to the $484,000. The other thing that, in hindsight, we have been very purposeful in our bond projects and hiring a CM. We were going to put this out to hard bid, is what we were going to do. We decided through the process that a construction manager would be a better process to go through. Most of the time, construction managers are hired at the same time with the architect, and they design together, which leads you to a consistent price. And this particular situation, we hired the construction manager late, where our architect was 90% through the construction documents. So when the construction manager came on, which is KBS Contractors, they did a really good job of putting on the brakes and saying, wait a second, you guys have designed to this point, and we just don't feel like you're not going to make budget. And we kept whittling it down. We got to a point where we felt like that we could go to the market and get a decent bid. We came in high, and so we kept whittling away. We came in at 5.52, I think 5.52. So we were higher, and what we finally decided on was, I think we just need to go back to the drawing board. So we asked BG to reduce our square footage. We had some shelled space for transportation that we were shelling it out, which would have made it easier to put back together in the end. We decided, okay, let's go back and let's take care of facilities and operations and build a building with the ability to add on to it for transportation at a later date. So that's what we did. The BG Consultants as a consent item agenda that you pulled off the consent is because of this redesign. So that is the $46,000 that we had to go back to the drawing board for and put back together. So I wanted to make sure that was very clear. I wanted to make sure you guys were well aware of that. And so a couple things there that the reasons why the estimate was off from the actual cost. I want to make sure I answer any questions you guys have. I appreciate you considering this GMP tonight, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions? No? Okay. Marcel, I just wanted to say, in this process, Tony and Kyle have kept the facilities committee kind of informed of where this was headed as they've gone through this work with BG and try to get this to the point where we were ready to bring this to the board. And we've really pushed them on making sure that where we ended up in the design was both fiscally responsible, but also truly met the needs that we set out to meet with starting this project. And I feel like we're at that point that this is what we have to do to be able to consolidate and own our own warehouse space and provide appropriate space for our F&O to function at the high level that we expect. So although it's slightly above where we thought we were going to be with this, I'm comfortable with the work that has gone into getting us there, and I just wanted to share that. And I know it's been a long and difficult process to get to this point, so I appreciate all the work that has gone into it. Marcel, did you have?
Yeah, just that, whenever you deal with existing sites like this that have been used for decades with industrial type uses and another type, there's lots of unknowns, lots of complexities that get added. Some of the reasons that Tony covered, that it's unfortunate that there was that much of a bust, but those things do happen on occasion, particularly in this type of situation. And like Shannon said, we did push them really hard to make sure it's okay, cut what you have to, but whatever you need to have, whatever we get, it has to serve your guys' needs. Otherwise, it's a waste of time and resources. And so they think that they've got what they need, and plus it's been designed in such a way that if we need to go back in at some point, if we have additional funds to add some additional things, growth, whatever that we need to add back in, it's done in such a way to minimize the cost moving forward when that happens, so that we don't have rework. We'll just be adding stuff.
Yeah, and I think what Marcel mentioned about planning for this project has been a lot different than planning for our school projects, because we didn't own the site at the point that we started the planning. And so that has, as Tony mentioned, that particularly with the site work, that really made that more difficult to accurately estimate where we were going to end up, because it wasn't our site to begin with, unlike with all of our school construction projects where we didn't have that as a factor. So with that, I'll stop talking with that, and opportunity for any other questions or comments. Are we ready for a motion then? And I just want, we're going to do two motions, just so everybody knows. We have to do the motion that's in here for the GMP, and then we also need to do the motion on the BG item that we pulled from consent.
Do we have to vote on them separately, or can we?
We probably should. Yeah. Separate. We need to do them separately.
So I'll do the GMP first. So I move the Board of Education approve of the amended construction management at-risk services contract with KBS Constructors Incorporated for construction of a warehouse and facilities and operations building located at 711 East 23rd Street in the amount of $5,056,407.
Second? Yes?
Fincher,
Yes.
Harmon,
Yes.
Ingram,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kimball.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Right.
Okay. And here's the second. So I move the Board of Education approve the amended contract with BG Consultants to provide design, bidding, and construction administration services related to the construction and renovation of the property located at 711 East 23rd Street in the amount of $46,000.
Second.
Fincher,
Yes.
Harmon,
Yes.
Ingram,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kimball.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. All right. Moving on to our final report of the evening, an equity update with Leah Wisdom, our Assistant Director of Student Services and Equity, and Danica Moore, Equity Facilitator. And Kevin Harrell, Director of Special Education.
actually, it's, what is it?
I'm sorry if I got your title wrong, Kevin. Okay.
He's gonna give it to you.
We all know who you are. We're good. All right.
Good evening. Like you said, I'm Leah Wisdom, Assistant Director of Student Services and Equity, and
Danica Moore, District Equity Facilitator.
Kevin Harrell, Executive Director of Student Services and Special Education.
Thank you.
So we're here to give you just an update on where we're at in terms of our equity work. And as you guys know, our equity work continues to be about closing achievement and opportunity gaps and building our capacity in terms of how we're embedding equity into all that we do, and also sustainability. So I think as we look at the update, we wanted to highlight the things that we are continuing to do and building on, and kind of where we're at and what our plan is moving forward. So feel free to ask us questions as we move through, and we're going to kind of take turns where the areas that we deal with the most. So as we think about those pieces, our equity committees are huge, and this is, as you guys know, Equity Council and Delta, and frankly the other committees as well, are relatively new. So this gives us the opportunity to bring in staff, parents, community members to continue to get input as we think about what this means for us, challenging some of our systems, procedures, looking at guidelines. So our Equity Council and our Delta both recently got some co-chairs. So one of our Equity Council co-chairs here, Annette Dabney, who also serves as chair of one of the subcommittees on the Equity Advisory Council. All of them have decided on meeting dates. So our Equity Council meets I had to write it down, the third Monday of every month. And Delta's going to meet the first Monday of every month. These are opposite your board meetings because we do have board representation on those groups, or on those committees. Our first Delta meeting is actually in September. It's on a Thursday, but from there on out will be that first Monday. Equity Council has been meeting, both have been meeting for quite some time, but recently they've looked at their previous brochure and made revisions to that. So that's been pretty exciting to watch that work happen. Through that, the Equity Advisory Council has developed 3 areas of focus, which is academic achievement, social, emotional, and behavior support systems, and policy. And each one of the co-chairs is chairing one of the subcommittees. So that's, you can kind of look for their brochure and those areas of focus. And Delta.
Leah, I'm sorry. I was going to say one of the Delta co-chairs is here also.
Oh, please.
And Jerry Shamari, she's back there. Yeah.
And we're meeting with them for the first time on the 18th. So we do have 3 co-chairs for Delta as well to plan ahead and think about what those will look like. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Our LGBTQ plus advisory committee is made up of teachers and administrators, and the teachers at the building that are associated with the LGBT group at the building, student groups at the buildings are a part of the 2 high schools, I'm sorry, are a part of this committee. And also we have representatives from the middle schools and then some elementary administrators. And we meet on not a regular basis, but just as needed. We've met about 5 times. We are in the process of completing some recommendations for expectations and guidance for our principals and teachers as it relates to LGBTQ students and how they're identified in our system and what we expect of our teachers and our subs. That has gone to the Equity Council. Next is Delta, but we feel like we've got the wording where we need it and some pretty strong language with those expectations. And so once they go through Delta, they will be presented, so you will be able to have an opportunity to see those also. Then our Special Advisory Committee, we have our Teacher Committee that's started last year and have met, we'll meet again, I think, this month. And then we're working on our parent. We still haven't got it started. We've reached out to some parents, but haven't gotten the feedback that we are comfortable with starting the group yet. But we are still in that process of working to create the parent advisory group.
So we're going to talk a little bit about district equity support, and Danika's going to take this over and talk a lot about what her role is and some of what our training is, and we'll move into professional learning.
Yes, so good evening again. So the first thing on the list there is minimum expectations. Last year, I had a conversation with the district equity leadership team around minimal expectations for my role working in the building, specifically with the administrators and the equity teams, trying to establish some kind of process that is an expectation versus an option to really be able to figure out where buildings are with their goals and what steps they need to be taking to make the moves to achieve those goals in an intentional, with all deliberate speed process. So one thing that I've established, it's not necessarily in writing, but for starting with new principals coming in, I have launched the year meeting with every single new administrator to Lawrence, specifically head principals, not necessarily assistants, working with them on specifically new to being in a district leading an E-team even, or even any type of equity goals in a building, specifically around things such as race and LGBTQ. So all of those principals have met with me under the understanding that we will do 3 more check-ins throughout the year, and as needed, as they need me, they will call. So establishing those relationships early on will help with that. As far as returning principals, in my experience of just this year, what it seems like is because there's nothing solidified yet, that's still being worked on at the district level, but thinking about a timeline of 1st to 3-year experienced principals in our district, and then another set of expectations for ones that are more experienced beyond that, but making sure that it's not just a one and done, to really help them and support them and scaffold them throughout their time in the district leading this work. Last year, I was able to I went to the University of K-State with the Diversity and Equity Council under the leadership of Dr. Nathaniel Thomas, the former Vice Provost of Diversity and Equity at KU, working with their council on KU as part of my community outreach. We went to K-State to lead and learn how to lead a microaggressions workshop through Dr. Alma Clayton Peterson out of Illinois. I brought that training back to Lawrence Public Schools, did some revamping of it to make it fit the needs of our school district, launched that in the district. By winter break of last year, it was an expectation that schools schedule that. From January to May, of the 20 schools, we had 14 schools pursue that training building-wide. 2 schools did it just with their equity team. So this year we'll be working on finishing up the remaining schools that did not complete that for their entire faculty. That workshop was also available on August 11th for any new staff coming into district to take it as an option. It was not a mandatory training. I do have some principals who are already rescheduling that for their entire staff to include the new staff, even if they already had it last year. So really helping principals get that into their buildings, and then thinking of some different flexible plans for principals who did it last year but have new staff that need it this year, working on that, letting principals have different options to get that to their staff that they want, to make sure that they have that before the end of the school year and necessarily not waiting till the end of the school year or the spring to get that done. E-team support, what that looks like for my role specifically, part of the minimum expectations, also working with the principals, is also to make sure that I can get in with the teams. In May, when I met with every E-team closing the year, one of the things that we put on the table for them was that their E-team meeting calendar should be linked to my calendar, so I should know when every single team is meeting. That will enable me to be able to go into their meetings, stop in and see what they're working on, provide them some perspective, maybe some things that have been missed, and see exactly where they are on track with the goals that link back to the district-wide goals versus their individual building goals. That will also give me a chance to support them face-to-face with what they're doing with faculty. Common times, some teams have things they're doing in their buildings, they're not sure how to get that to their staff or the best way to do it. So being able to provide perspective for that. So I have a couple of schools already that I'm on the calendar to go into buildings this week and support them as they roll out some trainings with their faculty, and being able to also provide them observation notes and feedback for their facilitation of that equity work in their buildings. That is what the teams have requested. So that will be something that we will make sure that they get as well. The E-team support also shows up in the E-team training part as well. That's the way I'll support them, and I'll talk about that next. Maintaining district equity resources. So 2.5 years ago, in district, we created a culturally relevant rubric that was originally created for looking at literature, and we expanded that to looking at all things across the board, whether it's a poster in the classroom for decoration, a video being shown to classes, or even evaluating a lesson plan for culturally responsive teaching. That rubric, again, we always continue to come back to it. It was the same rubric that went into place to help with the recommendation of the adoption of Reading Street. That was kind of the start of how it became a rubric. We worked with over 36 teachers to create that rubric. It started off as guiding questions. We have housed that rubric on our equity resource page this entire time, and I've made the upgrades as needed or as thought of by the E-teams. So continuing to push not specifically the rubric itself, but the process. The equity teams have all been trained in the process of how to navigate that in their buildings. And so to continue to reiterate that process over and over, regardless of what the tool is what the goal is. That process includes some of the PEG work around making sure that it's not just one teacher's eyes on something with their lens being the determining factor, but also seeking multiple perspectives to decide what that lesson or book may mean for another group without having any bias going towards that. So that's part of that, and also bringing in some of the tools like using the Courageous Conversations Compass with the students as a piece of that as well. The Equity SharePoint page is a site that I maintain with resources, not just for the equity teams, but also for the entire staff. One thing that I've added to that this year is during building floats and observations that I've roamed classrooms, I'm immediately, after leaving a building, I'm emailing the administrators of those buildings to let them know some of the themes I see in the classrooms I visit, some of the common patterns that either may link to multiple buildings, and also let them know the things that are going well in classrooms I visited. So today, I did foreign language at secondary buildings, so I'll be sending out emails to principals, let them know some of the things I saw. Elementaries have had some emails. And so from those observations, what I'm now doing is on the SharePoint site, I'm listing different tips for teachers to consider in their classrooms in the form of just reflective questioning. The beginning of the year, I launched 3 tips for classrooms to consider. One of them was how our students meet and greet visitors, specifically visitors of color or of diverse backgrounds. There are some patterns of that have shown up in our schools that are around microaggressions. So having teachers think about their beginning of year practices, and then also thinking about how they incorporate the compass with their classrooms. E-team trainings. In the beginning of this role, I did 2 trainings a year per level. So the elementary teams come in together and the secondary teams come in together. Those trainings are focused on just helping those teams understand the protocol, also giving them some space to kind of map out their goals and planning for the year. Now, this is in addition to what they should already be doing in their building. So this isn't a replacement for what they should already have established for procedures in their building. It's extra support to bring these teams together. It also gives the teams a chance to collaborate across buildings. So putting all of middle school and high school in rooms together, they get the chance to see what it looks like in other schools and get other perspective. And then we put 7 elementary schools together at a time throughout these trainings. They're typically half-day trainings. These focus on mastering the protocol, being able to model things for their faculty, and also being able to think about what the next steps are for their faculty. Typically, they land a little bit of planning time to be able to go think about what we've done in the training to apply to their building team. We start the year off by looking at their building goals. When the beginning of this position, I launched a survey to kind of see where they're to gauge their learning, what their needs were. We did beginning of year. This year, we're going to do beginning and end of year so they can have some end of year data to gauge their next fall goals as well, and possibly a mid-year evaluation to see what the progress they've made from the beginning of the year to winter break. So all of the teams were alerted of this in May, and they were all in support in favor of having that to be able to guide their teams. So that's what that will look like. This year, we're also extending that to 4 trainings instead of 2. So all of the levels, every building will have 4 trainings total. And these trainings are specific to the classroom teachers. Support for our district level equity teams is still in development as well for teams such as teaching and learning, IT, facilities operations, the teams that operate the district level.
Thanks. So that's a lot. And so we've been starting to have conversations about that sustainability piece. So our learning coaches, who you, as you know, are now in every building, well, they were before, but some are, at least staying at one building. As they come together and work here together to collaborate, they're going to have a focus on equity at each of their meetings, and Danica or I are going to go in and work with learning coaches so they continue to build their capacity and support where they can in buildings. And as sort of a next step to that, PEG, who we work with, offers an affiliate practitioner training, which is different than what Danica and Rebecca Reaver, who do our Beyond Diversity. It's the affiliate practitioner training is going through 6 week of training focused on the protocol from PEG to better be able to have those conversations and work with staff, but that isn't extended to being able to do Beyond Diversity without additional training. But we are focused on getting some of our coaches through that. Anna and I actually have both. Well, Anna's completed it. I'm almost done going through the 6 week training. again, focused on the protocol. You, throughout that training, it involves going through each piece of the protocol, listening to videos and/or readings, and interacting with other individuals from around the country who are also in the 6-week training. And then the final step is to go to a live day to culminate and bring together all that work. And then after you've been through the 6-week training, you have the ability to access some ongoing support from PEG to continue to build your skill set in the area of utilizing protocol and having those conversations. So as I mentioned, Anna and I were the first to kind of, Anna complete it outside of Becky and Danica, who have been trained for a long time and have the additional training. We have 4 coaches who are now interested in moving forward. So we're looking at doing 6 total individuals. So having some of our coaches go through that affiliate practitioner training, and then looking ahead to what does that look like? Do we want other members of our DELT and or building principals? So we'll continue to have that conversation. But we're excited about that in terms of building sustainability and capacity. So again, 2 trained, we'll look at 6 additional during just this school year. We of course have to be thoughtful and plan ahead for that in terms of learning coaches and then additional leadership roles. So I'm going to work backwards through this. Professional learning, we are going to offer PASS this year, which is Partnerships for Academically Successful Students. That's a tongue twister. That is going to be 3 seminars facilitated by PEG. They're going to work directly with our DELT team and our district and building admin. And the intent and purpose behind that is arming participants with better ability to pull our parents in, particularly our parents of color, and engaging our students of color. So that's what those 3 sessions are about. We're excited to, the first one is really just going to be DELT and admin. There's a possibility that they'll think about who their past teams will be, and they might have some other individuals attend some future seminars. But that's kind of our focus this year in terms of our partnership with PEG. We've talked about this. We have the AVID strand, Culturally Relevant Teaching, Transforming Educators strand, and that is something separate from Beyond Diversity. It is a 2-day training that focuses on race, gender, sexual orientation, and gender identity, so a lot of the intersectionalities. So we do have a plan in place for getting all of our certified staff trained in that. And as you may or may not recall, we had staff at our high schools attending this when they went to an AVID Summer Institute and coming back and saying, wow, that's something that's a nice, thing to put in my toolbox. That's something a lot of our teachers should have. We all attended and thought, yeah, that is something we should all have. Danica and I have both attended, and we will do a lot of those trainings together, really focusing on making that applicable to our work here, bringing in the protocol and ensuring that as we're introducing strategies and building our staff's toolkits, that they're also staying in protocol and using those pieces. So currently we've done 2. We did 1 last April and 1 this summer, and we have 3 scheduled for this year. And then we'll look ahead to what does the summer look like? Can we offer more? Things like that. So we have a plan in place. Each school's given an amount of slots that they can send, and that's something similar to what we do for Beyond Diversity.
Beyond Diversity, we will continue with the monthly ones. We have 5 scheduled for this year. We have approximately 450 staff left in the entire district to train. That includes classified and certified together. We did a food service training to start the school year in August and a custodial facilities operations one in June to target those specific groups that don't have the ability to come out of the building for 2 full days with the sub-coverage. So we scheduled 5, but we may not need all 5. We were working on a plan to be able to make sure that all the classified staff, specifically paraeducators, have the opportunity to go in a way that doesn't inconvenience the buildings, because we know that that number is larger than the certified staff yet to go. So we may not use all 5 this year to get them through. The first one will be October 4th and 5th. That was targeted for new to Lawrence staff, but based off the numbers, we're working and thinking about shifting that to let it be a combination of new staff with also paraeducators, so we can get some of them in early and not have that imbalance of numbers to start the year.
Last week, Dr. Stubblefield and I had the opportunity to attend at Equity Leaders Institute in Indianapolis. The Midwest, Great Lakes Equity Center, they're in the process of a name change, and now they're called Midwest and Plains Educational Access Center, something like that. So they've changed their name. So when I'm talking, I'm getting them confused. But we had an opportunity to attend an Equity Leaders Institute. This past summer, we had an opportunity to reach out to them because we were given their name for assistance to deal with some of the issues that we've been having. So we did reach out to them. They offered us lots of comment, and they were actually impressed with what we're doing, but also saw areas where we could improve. And so as a result of that, they invited us to their institute. And it's a kind of a private setting because there were maybe 50 to 60 people, and you have to, the process is that you have to put an application in to attend, and then they let you know if you're able to attend. So they put you off and say, we'll decide later, and then they let you know. Unfortunately, we were invited to attend. It was very informative, and it was set up for leaders, and so this is education, state leaders, districts all over the country. And it really was about if you're already in the process. So it wasn't people that was new to equity. It was people that are involved in trying to make change and looking at systemic change were invited to have a discussion about what you can do and what needs to happen and what you're doing. And it lends very well to our PEG work. They use the
Agreements.
The agreements, thank you. They used the agreements. There was a little mini Beyond Diversity. So it really lends to what we're doing. And as a result, we were able to talk to some districts and states that were doing some things that gave us some ideas of what to do. Additionally, they will reach out. They are in the process of looking at our data, and they are going to get back to us within the next month about what they can offer us. They have lots of resources that we have access to, the rubrics, professional learning. They will come into your district to do some learning, and they really look at, it's not just race, it's the intersectionality of all groups, all marginalized groups. That's their focus, and they really push that, which is something that we know that we need to discuss. So we are waiting for it.
Oh, I was just going to say, and this is a government-funded resource, so there's no cost when they provide the technical assistance. If they do come in and train, it's a minimum cost of paying for half of the travel and that sort of thing. But all of the resources and everything that they provide there's no cost associated with it. So that's been a great benefit. In last week's conference, the focus was looking at reframing the achievement gap and just looking at some things outside of assessments that may be attributing to the achievement gap. So it was very helpful, and we made some connections with some people in Iowa and also Missouri, because you sat with your cadre, and we were with Iowa and Missouri.
Questions for us?
Well, the SPED advisory committee that you said you will later on reach out to parents, are you choosing specific parents, or are you sending notification kind of similar out
It's
there?
similar. We're going to send an application out. We want to try to get a parent from at least every building, so we know it's going to be a large group, but a parent from every building, and then we're going to also try to have the principals help us get some, and then we'll go through that same process.
I guess, and maybe I just missed it, and I apologize if I did, but can you maybe go into a little bit more detail about how you're going to incorporate the Great Lakes equity stuff into what we're doing?
I don't have an answer yet.
Okay.
They're looking at our data. They're going to reach out to us and tell us this is how we can help you.
Okay, so they're going to make recommendations.
Yes,
Okay.
they have information data, so they're going to come back to us, letting us know what they can do.
And they also provide, so they have, as Danica was mentioning, we created a rubric to look at our resources. They have lots of rubrics and questionnaires that will help us to further, as we expand what we're doing, to look at it more broadly, and maybe if they're missing lenses that we, in our creation of our rubric, to help that get better as we look at materials and such. They also, we will incorporate them. They do a very good job of looking at the intersectionality of all marginalized groups, and they're very intentional about that. And during the 2 days that we were there, the questions that they, I can speak for myself, when I was looking at something probably from a more narrow focus, the leaders there would ask you, perhaps, did you think about this? So that in our effort to close the achievement gap and meet the needs of our students, we're not marginalizing another subgroup in that process. So they do a very good job of helping you to take a step back and look at that.
And I'll add on to that, with the rubric that we self-created, there are some contents that aren't able to connect with the rubric we have because the start of it was for literature and then it expanded out. So with their resources, we can bridge in more specific things for things such as science or mathematics that typically are unable to use the full 12 criteria of the current rubric we have now.
They have a rubric developed for math and STEM, and then just as you're looking at your curriculum as a whole, they also have rubrics for us to do self-assessment as a district on where we are around equity, and we kind of looked at that a little bit at the Leadership Institute. So once they look at all of that and we look at it, we can say, they'll give suggestions and we'll incorporate that. They will help you also to create a more strategic plan around addressing your equity based off your data.
Sounds like a
Can we
really great
access
resource.
that rubric, or is it up, or is it just?
It's stored in-house on the Equity SharePoint page. The original philosophy behind that when it was first created was because it was a professional development led in district with teachers that created it. The leadership at that time, it was stored in-house because we didn't want it wasn't a document we were sharing across districts because we knew that other people didn't have the same process. So we didn't want to have that accessible with people who wouldn't have the background, then it would, in case it was misused. So that was the original philosophy. So yeah, we do house it on the Equity SharePoint page for all the staff in district.
But the rubrics through this organization, they are open source, so anybody can go in there. It's all just right there. It's a free resource.
And you said they're based in Indiana?
Yes.
Okay.
They used to have offices there. One time there was an office at K-State, but they've consolidated over the years. So now that's why I went from the Great Lakes and the Midwest are consolidating, so hence the name change.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what the name is actually.
I can tell you, it's the Great Lakes and Plains Equity Assistance.
Okay.
Additional questions? A really great report, thank you. And thank you to our committee co-chairs who came this evening for being here and for your participation in these groups. And we really value that. We know your time is valuable, so thank you. All right. With that, we are concluded with our business this evening.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.